And we're live, guys. Welcome, one and all, to the Wizard Factory live show. Today is May 13th, 2023, and we're live on YouTube, Facebook, and the One Great Work Network, I believe. I'm not sure. I haven't touched base with Will today, but either way, it's a good day to be alive. Welcome, everyone, in. Let me know in the chat if you can hear everything okay. Drop a like. And it's going to be an awesome show today. We're joined by Dan Arnold, who's a former military and police officer. We're going to be getting into the nitty gritty on order followers, natural rights, all that good stuff. And of course, as always, an astrological weather report from Rodney Goodwin. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get it started. All right. My name is Logan Hart. Welcome in. If you're new to this channel, this is the Wizard Factory. Is all about giving you the spiritual tools and mindsets to live a more free and empowered life. So our growing community of those seeking self-improvement, self-empowerment, spiritual evolution, and a tribal family. If that sounds good to you, consider subscribing. Make sure you click that bell so you get notified every time we're live or I drop a new video. I've got a couple of new podcast episodes I'm working on, but it's a slow pace because I'm working like a slave, 70 hours a week or so. I still, make time for this channel as best I can. So, yeah, appreciate everyone being here. Make some noise in the chat. Let me know how everybody's doing today. Hopefully well. And of course, as for that like button, you know what to do.
Smash, smash. Yeah.
Yeah. So, a couple of quick announcements. Well, just housekeeping items, really. I encourage everyone to follow the Wizard Factory on all social media platforms, mainly Facebook and Instagram, as well as my personal page. I post pretty regularly there. If you enjoy my work, it's a lot more like short form, daily dose type philosophical posts and things like that. So do go follow me there. All those links are down below. If you just click, there's a Wizard Factory link tree, and then Logan's links as well from my personal pages. So I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and kick off the astrological weather report. And here's Rodney Goodwin joining us today. How you doing, brother?
Hey, Logan, how are you? Doing great. Yeah.
Doing good, man.
Yeah.
What you got for us?
Well, just looking at the energies, man. This is May's just been a powerful month. This has been full of all kinds of good shit. We're looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything in between. With what's going on, I don't even know, where do I even start? I mean, there's so much. I think I'm going to actually start a little show myself here, getting into some of these transits and stuff down the road here, man, because there's so much here with what's going on. Okay, so this right now, coming into where we're at, first of all, we've got Mercury still in retrograde, but tomorrow it moves direct, so it stations direct tomorrow. So we've got that. We've got Jupiter entering Taurus on the 16th. So 2 days later, Jupiter it comes into the Taurus gate at 0 degrees. It's going to blow it up. And then we've got a new moon at an anaretic position on the 29th, on the 19th. So this is going to be a very powerful position for the moon. It's in an anaretic. And what that means is at the 29 degrees. So anaretic in the Greek means destroyer. That's really what it means. And so it's there to teach us some lessons, but then also it's an ending. and then a beginning of something else. So we're looking at endings and beginnings. If you remember, we had that Scorpio lunar eclipse on the anaretic in Aries a while back, and that was at 29 degrees as well. And both of these positions were squaring off with the Plutonian energy in Aquarius, which is that real powerful transformative aspect of Plutonian energy and the power base that in our lives. So when we start to realize what's actually going on here, we're seeing basically a theme going on for the whole year, and that is that the Aries gate and the Taurus gate are coming up for review, and the eclipse that we had at 29 degrees with the Scorpio energy was all about realizing that the secrets and the things that are being hidden in context to the age of Aries, with things coming up on the timeline, and then also to the age of Aquarius, is what's being revealed, is what's coming up in context to the wounds, the betrayals, the things that we've had to deal with throughout the aeons here. And so what we're dealing with here is really this whole year is going to be that theme. So I just encourage everybody to do their individual path work, because this is where we can truly look at things in context to where we ourselves are wounded. Now, interesting enough, Chiron sitting in the Aries gate, it was just transited by Jupiter for about a month ago at 16 degrees. And then we have the planet Eris, which is all about discord and disharmony. So there was a lot of stuff coming up in context to the wound and the discord and all the stuff that was taking place, and you can see it on the collective mind. And so when we start to really look at what's happening in the Taurus gate now, with this new moon, we have 6 positions in Taurus right now. We're going to have the new moon, the sun, Uranus, the north node, Jupiter, and Mercury stationing direct, all in Taurus on the 19th. So everything's just like compiling into the Taurus gate right now. So what does this mean? Okay, first of all, number one, you've got to start implementing grounding techniques into your life. Taurus is the great grounder. So when we're dealing with grounding energy, we're dealing with what? You need to be saging yourself. You need to be working with Palo Santo. You need to be working earthing, putting your feet in the grass, putting your feet in the ground, salt baths. These different aspects of taking time to meditate and find balance and have a purposeful imagination meditation in context to what you're trying to do. Grounding techniques. This is all about amplifying that. When Jupiter comes into a gate, it blows the gate up. It amplifies it. It's big. So the big energy is coming into the Taurus gate. And what are we dealing with? We were dealing with Fehu, if you want to get into the runes in context to Aries, which is resources, right? Now with Taurus, we're dealing with Uruz, which is what? The ox. It's pounding out the garden aspect on your internal dialogue. So what have you planted? What seeds have you planted in context to the resources and the wealth that you want inside of you, and then allowing those tap roots to start to open up and go down deep into the ground and create the root system in context to what you're wanting to actually set in context to intent. And new moon is all about setting intent in the cycle. So we're dealing with these narratives, and these are going to be the narratives for the whole year now, because of that lunar eclipse that we had in Scorpio. Think of Taurus as being the parasympathetic nervous system. It's peaceful, it's calm, you're connecting with nature, you're sitting down under a tree, you're hearing the wind, you're feeling the wind on your skin, your body's calm. And then think of Scorpio as a sympathetic aspect in context to the things that are really powerful coming up, and transformation, and just really booming things out. Okay, so there's a balance between the second gate and the 8th gate that you have to find. Okay, and when you find that balance between those two aspects, then you are in a place where you are mastering your thought and emotion. The second and 8th gate are very powerful. The second gate is all about stability. See, and what is an ox? An ox is reliable, right? So it's treading out the garden, it's treading out the crops, right? And so the Uruz energy is all about health, wealth, mental health, mental stability, physical health, physical strength, and bringing things into a place where you're actually laying laying the root systems of your tree into a new space. And so you've got to, so with this new moon, you've got to set your intent in context to that, and being at an anaretic position, which basically means that this is an ending and a beginning. So we have both going on right now with Aries and with Taurus. So we basically went through a clearing and a cleansing over the last 5 years in context to the cycle that we're on since 2017. And now we're coming up into a space where we are starting a brand new beginning, because we are really setting forth another level in context to our path work on individual level. This is how we get it done. This is how you get it done. We get it done because we have to set the individual aspect in order first. You can never affect the reality field until your individual path work is at a certain space and in a certain light and in a certain aspect to leveling up your consciousness. You have to plow out. That's Uruz. That's the strength. And this is a brand new season to begin to do that. So this is where we're at. We've got 6 placings right now, and that's going to be coming up in Taurus on the 19th. It's a blow up into the Taurus gate, man. Huge.
So a lot of resources, vitality, up and coming like that.
Yeah. So what we're looking at here, people who have Taurus positions, I happen to have my Jupiter in Taurus, so I'm going to have my Jupiter return. People who have their sun, their moon, or their Jupiter or their ascendant in Taurus, this is going to be a powerful, positive time for you. You're going to have levels up in consciousness. You're going to feel more stable, more stability in your life, more reliability, in your life as well. But Jupiter is going to come in also into the gate and test those values. It's going to make you take a look at your values to see where they're actually at, because Jupiter is all about what? It's all about, expansion, right? And so it's the 9th gate. So we're dealing with the Sagittarian energy in context, which is belief systems and religion and all that crap, right? So that's what we're going to have to be looking at. What still has a hold of you in context to the religious programmings? And this is another thing that we're going to start to have to look at, because the last couple of days I've been really just sitting in silence for 2, 3, 4 hours at a time. And I realized that there were still remnants of the religious program that still had a little bit of connection with, And so as it started to come up and I started to feel into it and see it, I realized, those are pretty easy to get rid of, And so I just disconnected from them. I mean, I just took my mind and I said, I don't need that. Right. And so that is something that it's subliminal at times because it's on the subconscious, unconscious aspect. And so when you sit, and you allow your thoughts to come up and you sit in observation, you can really take a look at what programming you're still kind of connected to. That's what this gate's all about as well, because that's what Jupiter wants to do when it comes in. It wants to test your belief system. See? It's going to expand things. It's going to blow things up. So looking in context to the collective, this is all about, if you want to look at it from a financial aspect, this is all about inflation, dude. Yeah, shit's gonna blow up, man. Food prices, anything that comes from the earth, metals, silver, gold. We could see over the next year a huge increase in silver and gold with this particular, because anything that comes out of the earth is the Taurus aspect. So I've started to look at like silver, mercury dimes, and small, quarters, the small things that you could actually make that could actually use as a currency if you needed to. It breaks down into small increments of silver. So that's a good point right there.
And typically they say recessions typically last around 9 or 10 months on average. How do you see that lining up with what's going on astrologically?
Well, and that's what we could see also in context to this with the inflation, and then we may see also a deflation in context to the value of the dollar. So as the value of the dollar decreases, we could see an inflation in goods, especially in food prices, in context to anything that comes from the land, and then that then corresponds to the metal aspect, and that brings gold and silver into a higher value because the dollar is making a decrease. So on that level, you start to see how things could really play out. And with Uranus sitting there in the gate as well, this is an unpredictable aspect. So we don't really know what's going to actually play out in context to that, because Uranus is like, didn't see that coming, So it's kind of that lightning strike that brings the wake up call,
Mm-hmm.
So also prices in land increase, we could also see.
I was just curious if there was any transits that would kind of align with that timeline of potentially like a 10-month recession.
Well, what we're seeing is probably coming down to it when we start to see Uranus and Jupiter conjunct. This is where things could really get hairy, because and we will see that, because basically Jupiter's going to be in Taurus a whole year, so we're looking into May of 2024. So we've got a whole year going on, and so when that conjunction's made, we're going to see, we could definitely see some blowing up in context to stepping into a major aspect of recession or big pullbacks, and to all of this. So just understand that there's nothing wrong with being prepared for something that may be coming. Ammunition is another one. I mean, as far as being able to trade with, or there's all these different things that you could actually put into your house that you have that are ready to go, that you could actually barter with if you had to. And so just being prepared. It's not fear. It's just being it's just having preparation for things.
Right.
But the big thing that's going on here is over the rest of this month and going into June is this Jupiter squaring off with Pluto. So it's taking us back to the conjunction with Jupiter and Pluto, that took place, and we're seeing this now begin to play out in an ending and beginning again.
Keep going for just a minute. I'm
gonna yeah, no worries. So that was in March of 2020 when we had that conjunction, and then what happened? Jupiter went at retrograde, and then we had the conjunction with Saturn December 21st of 2020, which Saturn is limitations, delays, right? And then the Aquarian energy is all about freedom. So that's when the lockdown started to happen. It's amazing how the astrology aspect just plays out. So this is all a revisit of that Jupiter conjunction with Pluto that was in March of 2020 in context to what was rolled out. So we're still seeing this on the repeat coming back up. So you may see a lot of this, start to really play out or come back up over the next month and a half or so in context to the bullshit that was thrown out back then. So we're really dealing with that aspect. But the biggest thing is to understand and understand the lockdown in your own consciousness. And that's what's going to be coming up for review. What are you still locked down with? What things in your internal dialogue still aren't wielding correctly? And are you strong enough to take a look at the mirror and look at things that still need to be dealt with your own internal dialogue and consciousness to break through, the tesseract, the bullshit, right? The lockdown of consciousness that's going on this planet. I mean, man, I go out and I see that fluoride stare, and I go out and I just see the mind infection of the collective. And it's at an all-time peak right now. I mean, it is unbelievably sick mentally. The collective mind is so infected with the parasite, and and they've doubled down in context to Devoc AI and all the shit, right? And then bringing all the political bullshit, and it's just a goddamn circus over and over and over, just to pull us apart as human race and keep that infection in our collective mind, And I just wrote an article about it on my Facebook page last night. It was coming back up for review within me. What is still locked down within me? What am I still dealing with on an individual level to my path work? And where do I need to break free from? That's the Uranus energy. That's freedom. See, where do I need to get free? And that's what that Uranus and Taurus is, because Taurus is all about reliability, values, and being loyal and faithful. You got to be loyal and faithful, self-worth, self-validation, self-love.
Mhm.
That's Taurus. And
Right.
that's what's going to be amplified in this gate for the next year.
Loyal and faithful to yourself first of all.
Yeah, you can never have a loyal relationship if you're not going to be loyal to yourself.
Mhm.
How the hell are you going to do
Always
that?
always with the correspondence.
It's always in play. It's always in play. So the square is going to be playing out, and we could definitely see, what is Pluto, man? What is Scorpio? It's hidden secrets, man. Right?
Mm.
It's also big money. Like sometimes in a chart, when I look at it and I see aspects to Jupiter and Pluto, this is like the millionaire aspect. It's like the big money aspect in a chart. So you can see how those aspects play out when when there's trines, when there's squares or conjunctions or sextiles, or oppositions in context to Pluto and Jupiter, And so when things are very congruent, this is the potential for big money in your life, for big resources in your life, in context of transformation, because basically the Plutonian energy of the eighth house would be the resources of your partner or inheritances of your partner, where the Taurus aspect is all about the wealth that you're building in your own life. So you have, this axis going on with the 2-8. And so if you have a partner that has a lot of Scorpio energy and you're a Taurus, chances are that they actually have the resources, whether it's inheritance down the line or whatever it is that they're bringing to the table, and then with the Taurus energy, it's a steady build. It's the ox, right? You're steady, you're reliable, and you're bringing the finances and resources and creating multiple income streams. And so that's what the Taurus energy is all about as well. So during this time, you've got to look at the own garden of your own life. See, because Aries was all about the seed.
Mm.
Taurus is all about the roots. So we're dealing with the seed and the roots, and then what's being actually planted and tealed out in the garden, and then the abundance of Jupiter comes through the Taurus gate to bring the expansion of those seeds and bring them into harvest, bringing them up into a place where you can actually see the manifestation of what you actually planted in your own internal garden.
Right. And if you didn't plant anything, there's not going to be any harvest for you.
Well, you're going to get weeds.
That's true.
You're
Yeah.
going to get weeds. You're going to get weeds, man.
That's the thing
Yeah,
with this stuff is like this is all going on for you, but only you have to be the one to leverage it. It's not going to just magically make things happen. You have to be aware of what's going on and actually be taking action to maximize the gains from each of these energies that are pulling things forward.
right. And the whole idea is that if you don't take care of your garden, the weeds are going to overtake it and choke out
Hmm.
the life of the good seed that's been planted.
Yeah, it's
See?
just like the saying, if you don't control your own mind, someone else will. Like,
Yeah, and that's what's going on. We're basically, been ruled by the parasitical consciousness, the vampiric aspect on a collective level for so long that as a human race, we forgot who we are. We've lost our way. We don't have any purpose, and so the charade and the ruse just keeps playing itself out on the loops over and over and over again, in context to the astrological aspect. I mean, looking back, what was happening 12 years ago, well, they were talking about the debt ceiling and they passed some law about the debt ceiling, right? During the Obama administration. Well, what are we dealing with now? Coming up again, the whole debt ceiling thing again, now coming up in June and July, Jupiter and Taurus. It's just playing out on a loop. See? You
Groundhog
know?
Day.
Yeah, so we're doing it over and over and over again, but at some point, something has to break. I heard a video the other day, a guy was talking about what would happen if 50 million people just decided, you know what, I'm not going to work today, number one, and number two, I'm going to go pull all my money out of the bank because I don't like the bank.
Well, the bank wouldn't like that.
Yeah, the people have the power, right? If they would just understand that they do. But there's too much fear involved. See, with those particular chess moves, because well, what if I don't have a job anymore? How am I going to pay this? How am I going to pay that? If I take my money out of the bank, blah, 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 right? So you've got all of these narratives running inside the collective of fear, because fear and betrayal are the root of this infection. It's what infected the roots, and so we're drinking from that poisonous stream, over and over, and eating the rotten fruit from the tree that's been produced. That's come up and for review here, and so we have to realize that it is only at the individual level that you can change anything. You can't change anyone. You can't change anything outside of yourself, and that is the most powerful position that you can take as an individual, is realizing that this particular transit, Jupiter and Taurus, is all about expanding your self-worth, your self-validation, and that self-love. This is the year to do it if you're ever going to do it. And to those who have sun, moon, ascendant, your North Node or Jupiter in Taurus, this is your year to level those things up, going and taking it to May of 2024.
Awesome.
I mean, look, we've got 6 placings in Taurus on May 19th as Jupiter enters in at 0 degrees and is charging the whole gate in context to the new moon and setting these intentions. So
powerful.
Get it done, man. Do it.
Let's go.
Bring
it on.
And this also is going to translate into, we may see some pretty intense events, dealing with the banking industry this next year.
Upheaval.
I mean, just get ready.
That's the word
man.
That's the word that comes to mind. Upheaval.
Exactly. We may see some very cataclysmic events take place in context of the financial markets. So it's not there's nothing wrong with getting prepared, for anything that being ready for whatever comes.
Sure, you can be cool, calm, and collective and go in your backyard and go build a storm shelter. It doesn't have to be something like you said, like out of fear or like, oh my God, we're like, no, it's just that you see where things are going and you want to be empowered by being proactive and setting yourself up to mitigate the bullshit.
Absolutely, because the transits are giving us a glimpse into the future. See, that's what they do. It's almost like, the signs are in the heavens. The heavens declare the signs in context to what's coming. So it's almost a prophetic aspect in context when you're looking into the stars. And this has been going on for aeons. Astrology is as old as breath. So it is breath. When you think about it, you're breathing in the cosmic winds. You're breathing in the cosmic aspect in context to when you take that first breath. When you come into your incarnation, you take that first breath. It's magnetizing your DNA and creating the solar spiral template within you.
That brings up an interesting thought, real quick. Is this idea of like the stars were probably here before we were.
Yeah.
And if all this stuff is going on, like astrology, it didn't create astrology. Mm-hmm. Astrology is the realization of astrology, of like human beings observing and saying, oh, there's some patterns here. Let's start formulating this science to actually be able to understand what's happening. But as we know, truth doesn't give a shit about your perception. It is what it is. It always was.
Yes.
And it's up to us to actually try to come to understand the universe and how it works.
Yeah, truth isn't subjective to anything.
Exactly.
And neither is astrology. It doesn't give a shit either. It's just speaking in context to being able to work with planetary alchemy and high planetary magic. This is how we work. I mean, it's Wizard Factory, right? Working with high planetary magic. That's what we're doing when we're looking at transits on an individual level and collective level in our lives, and being able to see how they're going to play out, and then preparing ourselves and working with that alchemical process within our own selves, from the calcination aspect to the coagulation. See? So we're working with the cosmic law of alchemy, and the cosmic principles of natural law. So when you start working with those, you start to have these epiphanies, these revelations, this apocalypto, this unveiling that begins to take place within your mind. and you start to realize how mind fucked you have been. See? And that's the unveiling. That's the apocalypto aspect.
100%.
You know? So you got to use these tools, guys. They're there for you to, these arts of gnosis are there for you to work with, you know?
That's why I bring you on every week, brother.
You know,
Always very, very useful.
And you've got to work with them because this is part of the process of your individual path work, you know? And if you don't work with them, you're missing it. Literally, you're missing levels up in consciousness. You're missing the opportunities of how things are being constructed and put together on the solar spiral of creation at this particular moment, or these particular trances that are happening, that you can tap into and utilize that energy and that power base within yourself to level up your consciousness. So this is basically what's going on in an overview, bird's eye view, Piscean big picture nutshell aspect. I mean, it's huge, right? Energies are huge right now with the Taurus gate, you know. But I would say more than anything else with this new moon, you know, let's take a look at, and set some powerful intentions for your life, you know, to these Taurus aspects. You know, the biggest thing that I think everybody needs to do is, number one, how often are you actually saging yourself? What shamanic practices are you actually putting into your life? You know, do you use sage? Do you use Palo Santo? Do you use rosemary? Do you use the smoke aspect to work within your house and in your auric field? Are you actually going out and grounding? Are you actually going out into nature and grounding and feeling into nature? Are you feeling into the earth core? Are you feeling into the roots of the trees? I mean, these are all Tauranian aspects, you know? Right. So, you know, if you're not doing that, or if you're doing that on a level, this is the time this next year to really expand that practice.
Awesome, man. Let the people know where they can hit you up at.
Link trees in the description below. hardcoreproductions9@gmail.com. You can actually book a session on my Hardcore Productions page on Facebook. And you can find that if you go to my actual page, Rodney Goodwin. I have links there as well to it. You can hit me up on Messenger. And then my website's hardcoreproductions.com. And you can go to my services page to see what I have to offer.
Absolutely. Definitely hit this man up. He knows what he's talking about. He'll help you out, give you some guidance on things, especially with transits.
Yeah. I mean, we could definitely see some big increases in inflation this next year, and a possible major recession. So, you know, It is what it is.
Yep. All right, brother. Thank you as always.
All right, man.
See you next week, man. Take care.
Sounds good. Okay. Thank you, man.
All right. Always awesome stuff from Rodney there. So real quick, I want to bring some attention to the free initiation package. So check out this short video. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just want to take a quick moment to offer you a special gift. It's the free initiation package download. This is a free download package that includes the Toolbox mini course. I created this package to equip you with all of the essential tools you need for any type of energetic or magical practice for anyone serious about their spiritual development. It's comprised of 3 parts: the circle, the breath, and the voice, where you'll learn how to cast the Circle of the Magi, various breathwork techniques, including a powerful guided breathwork meditation, rune galler, and more. You'll also get access to the Inner Sanctum, our private Facebook group and Discord server, as well as some Wizard Factory wallpapers for desktop and mobile, all for free. And for those who've already seen this course, I'm happy to announce that this is a brand new remake with better production and even more information. You can find the link to get yours in the description below. So check it out and let's get back to the content. All right, there's that link right there if you want to just scan the QR code, or in the link in the description below on the link tree there. Want to take a quick minute to give a shout out to the 4 people that are supporting Let me switch this. There we go. Supporting us on Patreon. You can get the Wizard tier for $4.99 a month. You get these awesome perks right here. But most importantly, you get the warm, fuzzy feeling of supporting the great work, truth based content, raising the collective consciousness of humanity. And so, a big thank you to Edas Hugh, Slope Oak, AJK Green, and Theo Lux. The last two there are brand new subscribers. So thank you very much. I'm glad to have you as part of the tribe. Eventually, I'd like to reopen the tribe tier, which when I first launched this, there was two tiers, and the other one had a lot more like hands-on. There was like a monthly group call, private Q&A and rune readings and all this kind of stuff. But I want to make sure there's enough demand for that, and also I just don't have the free time for that. But eventually, I would really like to get something more like a personal group going, like a private, where we can interact, we can build friendships and things like that, because that's ultimately what I want. This is remember the tribe is one of our taglines. So let me know in the chat if you'd be interested in something like that. So yeah, thank you to those 4 people, and do check out that if you want to support the channel. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on our guest. One moment. Here's Dan Arnold. What's up, brother? Welcome
Hey,
to the
what's going
show.
on, man? Thank you for having me on the show. Rodney, I'm not familiar with his work. If you're watching, Rodney, I just want to say that was like a pep talk for me. My birthday's tomorrow. And
Nice.
yeah, I'm a Taurus. So that means I can be stubborn. But what he said about grounding and some of the things he said about what's coming up, I have a psychic mentor who has told me the same things. And she's legit as they come. And she's not into, I'll plug her if I'm allowed to. If anyone's in the Cleveland area wants to
Sure.
get a reading, go to Psychic Sonya, man. She knows what she's talking about. That's Psychic Sonya. She's not into the astrology. She's more like astronomy. But they're saying the same stuff, like with what's coming up with the financial crisis. And she's told me some things a little more exact. And things that she's told me in the last couple of years have come true. And pretty quickly. There's like less time happening in between what she says and when it happens, which in itself is notable to me. But yeah, very synchronistic this whole week. Everything in my life leading up to this show, what he just said today, and even something you did a couple years back, I just wanted to thank you for. It was at the C2 conference, May 14th, 2021. And you did a presentation on Hermetic principles. And there was one part of that presentation that you did that really motivated me and was, I thought was awesome. It was be the fourth initiate and don't
Yeah.
quit. And then the imagery you used for the don't quit, I really dug. So, I mean, I really appreciate your work.
Oh, thank you very much for that, man. Yeah, that was a while ago, and I sometimes forget about that that presentation. That was a very kind of tumultuous time in my life. I sort of kind of threw that presentation together last minute, believe it or not. But
Wow.
that means a lot that that it was so impactful to you, man.
Yeah, it was.
I'm really looking forward to Funnel 3 this year, as well as Seed later on this year. But one thing at a time, right? I've been working hard on the presentation for Funnel about mind control, and I think it's going to be
Right.
probably like the best thing that I've done yet. Like it's pretty legit. So, real quick, Jacob Gentry, I saw he said he's having trouble downloading. I'm not sure if you're having trouble with the QR code, but if you can try either the link in the link tree, or just go to the website, thewizardfactory.com is the first thing at the top of the homepage. Hopefully that helps, but let me know if you're still having trouble, and we'll get that figured out for you. But yeah, Dan, welcome to the show, man. We've been planning this for several weeks now, just been kind of waiting for the right time. Obviously, I just finished the 3-part series, the masculine, the feminine, and then renewing the vows. Really happy with how that turned out. And thanks to everyone who's like shared it and commented and everything like that. I've gotten really good feedback on that so far. So, this is going to be a little bit of a pivot back towards more of like the kind of anarchistic, say, or voluntarist, whichever word you prefer, side of things. I really like to bring a good blend. It's like it's the wizard factory, so there's a lot of paganism and magic and occultism and stuff like that. But everything comes back to first principles, and if you don't have that morality in place and applied unanimously across the board, not just in like your magical practice, but even just on the boots on the ground level. And this is that's very just straightforward practical, right? We all grew up learning about government in school, and pretending to be the police officer that gets the bad guys, and all this kind of stuff, right? So I'm really excited to get into this topic with you here, man. And before we get into some of your background, I want to start with this quote. I first of all, this is, if some of you older fans of this channel might notice, I've been kind of recycling and revisiting old topics. So if you go way back, 2019, when the channel first started, and it was not just me at the time, those first few episodes were pretty rough, right? I was brand new to content creation and stuff like that, and I still think that the material there is good, but it's kind of difficult to get through with the bad sound quality and just like straight lackluster presentation and all that kind of stuff. So I've kind of been revisiting some of these concepts in this new format. So some of you may recognize the title, "The Thin Blue Line." There was a two-part series way back in the early days. And I also started that one with this quote here, but I just think it nails this topic so well, just puts it in a nice, neat package. So it's a quote from Dr. Robert Higgs. "The good cop, bad cop question can be disposed of decisively. We need only consider the following. Every cop has agreed as part of his job to enforce laws. All of them. Many of the laws are manifestly unjust or even cruel and wicked. Therefore, every cop has agreed to act as an enforcer of laws that are manifestly unjust or even cruel and wicked. There are no good cops." Because it's like, and to expand on that a little bit, it's like if you say, "Oh, that guy's a great gardener," right? You would assume gardening is what they do. And if they like, or say they're doing it for hire, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I want some begonias right here, and go pull these weeds," and then the gardener's like, "Meh, maybe, like maybe I do some of that, maybe I don't." Does that make them a good gardener, right? They're literally not doing their job, right? So that's the dichotomy here, is to be a good cop, because cop is your job description. You need to be effective at executing what your job duties are, which is exactly what this quote says, is enforcing the laws, all of them. If you're picking and choosing which rules you follow at any job, see how long you're going to keep that job, right? So, that's an overview, and I want to dive more into that. But first, I'd like to start, Dan, by just getting kind of into some of your background, as far as like, when did you were in the Marines first, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Marine
So
Corps.
give us a brief overview of that timeline of from the military and then into the police force, and then we'll get into kind of what made you decide you wanted to leave that behind.
Right. Well, I went into the, I grew up, in the 80s. And when I think back on it, I was socially engineered to believe in all these different contradictions. And you're, watching G.I. Joe, and you're watching all these different shows where you're going to be the hero if you're in the military, and you're going to be the hero if you're a cop. And in certain cases, at certain points in history, it's probably the case, right? But I grew up on that. So, I wanted to serve. I wanted to protect and serve. And I went in the Marine Corps during a war, in the infantry during a war. and I didn't get deployed, but I was stationed at the U.S. Naval Academy. Um, you know, I did ceremonial functions there. I guarded the ECAC towers, which was the central communication hub for the entire Atlantic Fleet. Was on a react team. We were like the shock troops for the Naval Research Center. Um, and it was really a not really illustrious military career. I was only in for a couple of years. I got out with an honorable discharge and worked in a prison for 5 years, a closed maximum security prison. And one of the things I noticed in the prison, and I can get into a whole, any one of these topics I'm going to bring up can be an entire show. But like the prison system, the first thing I noticed was there's a lot of people in there that didn't need to be in there, sitting right next to people who ate people, who didn't need to actually be alive. To be honest with you, thinking back on it. And at the same time I was doing that, I became a part-time cop, and I started working different in different jurisdictions in the greater Cleveland area. And then I got a job with the federal government in law enforcement capacity. At one point in time, I was also working for NASA Security or their private police. I've got a large, eclectic array of law enforcement experience, and I quit the job several times over the years, and then would go back, and then finally, quit it for good. Full time anyway in 2015. I worked once in 2019, and then in 2018, I set this intention. I started writing this book, Rise from Darkness. Who are they? And my intention was, I'm going to find out who they are. I want to connect what we call colloquial religion, right, spirituality, with science. And I wanted to find this stuff out. And, it didn't take more than a few months before I ran into Mark Passio's work in early 2019. And I probably would have ran into it earlier. I think he just came back on the air in 2019, which is probably why I ran into his work then. But I had already read the Kabbalion. I was researching and doing things. And, and I talked to Mark on his show about a year ago. And I had a chance to be a cop again full time. Since I've grown my hair out, I've been offered, jobs on different departments to do vice and shit like that. And I've, politely declined. But I seen a presentation that Mark did called Cosmic Abandonment. And I mean, it blew my mind because it was so embarrassingly right on. I was in a state of cognizant dissonance at first. Like, no, we're the good guys. Some of us are good, but then the way he put it, he was just so right. I mean, parental abandonment. You want to do something to make people proud of you. All that stuff is there. And the thing that will, eat you alive when you're a cop, if you got a conscience, and there's a lot of cops out here I'm reaching out to who do. And the reason why I haven't been messed with of talking to them, I haven't been like, at least not by the rank and files, because they know I'm telling the truth. There's guys out there just counting down the days so they can get out of that job. Because what I'm saying is true. There's so many fucking contradictions in that system. It will drive you nuts. It creates a schism in your own psyche. So, that's like just a basic background of my basic background. I had a near-death experience in 2017. I actually did die when I was 6 years old. So I these are experiences I put into my book, Rise from Darkness. Who are they? I quoted Mark several times and thanked him in the book and put down, I wanted to make sure people know how to get to him. And yeah, that was, it was interesting because how we talked about those weeds?
Yeah.
When they grow back, sometimes that weed of resentment within me is very evident. And I go back to 2017 when I nearly died. And what happened was with that, I could just go into that real quick. I had a really bad back and I was paralyzed. So the opioids they were giving me Dilaudid like every 3 to 4 hours were killing me.
Mm-hmm.
So my breath was giving out and I was like, they had to give me something to bring me back. Heart rate was dropping real low. I didn't die. I didn't flatline or anything. But like when my eyes were closed, I can see this like bright silvery light underneath my skin, but my eyes were closed. And then there was this voice and it wasn't mine. And the really weird thing is I was about to die. I had to accept it. When I did die when I was 6 and they brought me back. Now I was 46. And I just remember saying to myself, wow, these 40 years went by quick. holy shit. I wasn't really fearful. I had to accept it. There was nothing I can do. I remember being incredibly weak, but I remember having this overall feeling of just love.
Hmm.
There was no anger. There was no anger at anybody. There was no nothing. It was just love. And this voice kept saying, only, love and discernment can drive out hate and fear. It just was like a repeated, mantra that kept coming.
Wow.
And, what I had was this regret. I regretted ego identifying with stuff I did, or ego identifying with stuff that I didn't do, and being petty and chasing my ego and so much, bullshit. And I remember I was telling a young man this, and he asked me if I ever regretted love. And I instantly answered, no, I regretted not loving more. So whenever those weeds grow back from me, and they do, and I get a little bit, emotional when I think about this, but when those weeds grow back from me, I go back to that near-death experience, and it helps me pull the weeds right out. So
That's great.
That's where I'm at. I'm a weird combination of a lot of different things. I've been told I'm clairaudient, so the ex-Marine hears voices. I like to joke around with that, but yeah, that's my basic background.
That's amazing, man. I mean, it definitely, like you said, it's very eclectic. You've probably seen a lot of the world. You've seen probably some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And but that experience, it seems like that's kind of like something that grounds you as well.
Yeah,
Like you said.
it's humbling. I've had a lot of humble pie, and some of it was cement flavored, and I think I needed that. So, like what Rodney was talking about with regaining your confidence, and now's the time. Yeah, now's the time to exactly do that and be a little bit of the old me with the confidence, but with the learning of the humble pie that I've had over the years.
Yeah, I talk a lot about how ego itself is not bad. It's actually a good thing. It's a part of you. It serves you. It has a very specific purpose. It's that when we have so much wounding and insecurity and in those kind of psychological issues, the
Mhm.
ego tends to swell up out of proportion to where it should be. But
Right,
that's like, it's like, if your foot is swollen up really big, you don't go around saying, "Oh, feet are bad. They crippled me." No, it's not the foot's fault. It's just a sick foot, and you need to like fix it and get it
right,
back into balance.
right. Now let the ego, run the show. And
Right.
the thing about when you take the oath, I'm going to just tell you how most cops' minds are. You take the oath for the military or for police, even one in corrections, they're all the same oath. Okay. And at the time, like right now, I've done podcasts where I've talked about I'll wipe my ass with the Constitution. But, at the time they say, hey, you're going to uphold the Constitution and you're going to protect and serve. And most cops and that aren't egotistical, badge heavy people when they get on the job are really only paying attention to that protect and serve part. Okay. There's a part in the general orders of the SOPs, which is standard operational procedures on any police department or any military unit. And part of those general orders say that it is your duty to disobey immoral orders. So what these politicians are real good at is obfuscating what is moral. So part of my outreach to police and military is you have to understand what true morality is. So they can't obfuscate those for you. So you know when to disobey the orders. Because no one pays attention to all the other laws, like when they say and other laws that are passed and blah 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 blah. Well, all these guys know the system is shit,
Hmm.
but we're raised with all these contradictions and just acceptance of all these contradictions, even with the controlling of so-called monotheistic religions, even though they're not really monotheistic. The Abrahamic religions have a lot of contradictions in them. We're raised to we just accept those.
Yeah, and then the government system, I think, is an extension out of that same mind virus.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. Trying to think. I just had an idea. Talking about rights. That's what it is. You can't, it's a testament to how indoctrinated and brainwashed we've been from such a young age. If we're like at just the individual level, so many people are unable to even tell you what a right is. So
Right.
they, let alone defend their own rights. Now, when you take that a step above to a police force that are supposed to be protecting everyone's rights, and they don't know what rights and subsequently wrongs are,
Right.
and they have this legal authority to use force and kidnap people and do all sorts of things, that gets really scary. So
Yeah.
that's so interesting, but very important, why education, especially just at that the foundational level of simple right from wrong, is just you can't get around that. If you don't have that in place, the entire society is cancerous and will just begin to eat itself from the inside out.
Yeah, exactly. And seeing the people that are running the show, the last thing they want is for their order followers to understand what actual morality is, because then they won't have any more order followers.
Hmm.
I mean, that would be as simple as that. When I was a cop, I would get in trouble, not real trouble, but I was definitely um, I wasn't liked by certain people because I wouldn't write minor misdemeanor violation tickets. I didn't want to write these, speeding tickets. So I've said this on other shows. I didn't want to be that cop who was Mr. Meaner. I didn't want to do that kind of shit. I did it a couple times in the beginning, and I made this lady cry, and I was like, you know what? That didn't feel good. This isn't what I became a cop for, so I didn't do it anymore. And then I'd get in trouble for it. And they'd be like, you're not good enough to do the small stuff. You just want to do the big stuff. I'm like, no, they're good enough for me not to be doing the small stuff. We're not here to do that shit. So no, I'm not doing it. And there's not an actual quota, right?
Mm.
But there's an unspoken one.
Makes a lot of sense. It's like
Yeah.
you're not technically going to get some kind of write up or something, but you can feel that judgment, that sort of like disrespect coming from your peers and colleagues, as well as probably the higher ups as well.
There was, yeah, I wasn't going to get promoted. I'll just put it to you that way.
Yeah,
But
see.
the whole thing is there's a lot of backstabbing in the law. So like the thin blue lie, right? It's a perfect name for this because they think that there's this thin blue line that they're all covering each other's back. They're not. There's a lot of knives in backs. There's a lot of backstabbing. They throw each other
Mhm.
under the bus very easily, and even for things as simple as a promotion. If they're afraid you're going to even go for a promotion, that try to make you look bad. There's so much infighting, and they use the excuse, well, you get this many alpha personalities together, you're always going to have this kind of blah 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 blah. And I'm not to say there isn't any type of camaraderie here and there, but there is a lot of backstabbing. There is just a lot of conflict. Like you really have to be on guard from all sides. It's like a
Well,
very, it could be a very stressful job. I had this 19-year-old that I kind of talked out of it, and I'm happy about that. And I just said,
good.
hey, man, if you really want to do it, the high pay, low stress, and general public adoration, make it all worthwhile, man, go for it. But I ended up over a few weeks talking him out of it. And it wasn't for those reasons. It was for the moral reasons of it.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm going to continue to do that, like on a personal level, but on a bigger level, I would like to reach out to them with what's going on in the world because uh, you know, the intermediate level of what I know about the occult and natural law, which comes from Mark Passio and guys like you and other, other content creators that I've listened to and on the One Great Work Network. They can't do this without their order followers doing it for them. And they get the order followers to do it so they can mitigate, the negative consequential effects, or at least most of them, by getting others to do their dirty work. Plus, they're cowards. They won't get out there and do it themselves. They're straight up fucking cowards. So I know I worked for a lot of them. I worked for them. I can tell you a guy a lot, but yeah, that's
Yeah, I was going to mention on the thin blue line or the thin blue lie thing. I made a short like a few weeks back, talking about how it's indistinguishable from this mafia term called omerta. Have you ever heard of that?
no,
It's
no,
basically the same sentiment of like, we're this family, and anybody messing with any of us is like messing with me. And it's basically mafia slash gang mentality. And it
yeah,
makes sense what you're saying. There is some some camaraderie, because there is some of that, but it's not born out of true care or love. It's self-serving. It's like forming alliances. It's all kind of the satanic mindset, essentially. And hopefully those watching know what I mean by that. I don't mean like the devil guy from Christianity. I mean like the actual satanic mindset, which is essentially pure egotism and self-worship, and thinking you're God and acting like your survival is the most important thing, essentially. So you'll do whatever you need to do, quote unquote, need to do to get ahead, to get what you want, and everybody else be damned. So, and it's kind of like the same thing in the corporate world as well. It's that shark, dog eat dog, sharks in the water kind of thing. So you saw a lot of that firsthand.
Yeah, it is a me mentality. Like, I don't know if anyone's have you ever read any Forgotten Realms books, like science fiction, fantasy, Dragonlance?
Mm-mm.
And I'm kind of a nerd, but there's these dark elves called the Drow, and they don't even have a Drowish word for friendship. It's more like a partnership or
Uh,
something. They don't even have a
yeah,
word for friendship. So that's almost what it reminds
tactical
me.
alliance.
Yeah, it almost alliance. Yeah, that's almost what it reminds me of in that line of work, because there's a lot of
Interesting.
backstabbing, and there's a lot of cops out there who got into the job who want to do good, and those are the ones that aren't gone yet. Those are the ones that can either see what I think is going to happen since 2014. And this is getting into a little bit of theory, but they've been doing everything they can do to get a lot of cops, the good cops, to, I'll just put those in quotations, because that was a hard pill for me to swallow, to understand that I wasn't a good cop because I was helping to uphold an immoral system. And I don't think there's one cop out there right now who could actually look at the system and say, "Oh yeah, it's moral." They know. So I don't think I'm making any enemies that I don't already have by just talking like this. I know I'm not, in fact. But in 2014, they started doing things that made a lot of the good cops want to quit the job, and they're being replaced with a lot of younger cops now who it's like the German Knight of the Long Knives without the actual long knives.
Hmm.
Everybody in the order following business who they know wouldn't do these immoral things is slowly weeding them out and replacing them with ones that will do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked with an Air Force recruiter about a week and a half ago. It shook me up on how this guy lied, because he seemed so convinced. I'm glad I checked him out and looked into him. But before I gave him my number, gave him any information about me, at least personal information. But he did tell me, and I believe him, that the military currently is not taking, if you have like a hangnail, that they'll reject you from being able to, enlist in the military. So we're not really growing the military right now.
Hmm.
They're not doing that. So there's a lot of different things going on. And for me, having done a little bit of detective type of work, plainclothes investigative work and stuff like that, you don't have to be a psychic to really take a look at the puzzle pieces that are coming together. And there's what Rodney was saying. A lot of that's coming up. I just think what they have now is these young 22-year-olds, 21, 22, 23-year-old cops. They're mind controlled in this real leftist communist type of mentality. And I want to reach out to them also, but it's the guys in their 30s and 40s who've been on the job 10, 12 years who, if I can reach out to those guys and get them to understand what objective morality is and what they're, cross the line, if there's anything what pissed me off greatly, it was during the 2020, mostly peaceful, riots. If there's anything that tells you that they're order followers, like if they have any doubt that they're not just merely order followers, look at what happened during 2020 when they were ordered to not take action to protect personal property and people. They stood down, didn't do nothing. When they were ordered to protect public property, they used excessive force. So where's the congruency in that?
Mm.
Think for yourselves.
That
I mean,
That kind of presents an interesting conundrum too, whereas if you're going for people that actually have any like spark of humanity left within them, and trying to speak to that and teach them about morality, if they all left, would that kind of mean like the only like that was the last of the even remotely good ones, and then everybody left would just be the order following machines, you know?
well, and that's what I'm
Not that
worried.
that's your problem, and that's kind of
Yeah,
where I
I'm worried about
fall
that
back on
coming.
thinking.
That's what I'm worried about coming. And then we got many other things going on in the world where, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 5, 6 years we don't see UN peacekeepers coming in here to aid
Yeah,
what's left of our law enforcement, because we've got so much strife they're creating and so much division they're creating through race, sex, age, anything they can use to create division. We're going to have like a civil war, here's something else. I teach firearms instruction. So I teach, for the NRA, and not for them directly, but I'm certified by the NRA to teach several different firearm disciplines. I think we should have had constitutional carry since the beginning. But government doesn't give a shit about anything but making money. So you have to have a license to carry. Then all of a sudden, at the same time in the last couple of years, all these states go to constitutional carry right before a possible civil war. As far as I'm concerned, they're going for maximum damage. I mean, like, they care about any of that. So I'm not saying that they shouldn't have it, but now there's a lot of people out there who are going to be carrying firearms who are going to end up shooting themselves. They've had no training. And they should seek the training. I just think the reason why the government did that isn't for the Constitution. It isn't for your rights. They don't care about our rights.
right. And what would you say is the ratio of, I mean, I can't even say good. It's not just a split dichotomy like that of good cops, bad cops. But I mean, guys in there that actually are trying to work within the system and do the best they can and avoid enforcing unjust laws and things like that at this current, or at least when you were in and could see it from the inside. What was roughly the ratio?
That's a tough question.
It's definitely not black and white, of course.
No, no, no. That's probably one of the toughest questions I've ever been asked. If I had to guess, I mean, I could say uh, maybe like 30, 35% good, 20, 25 to 30% just
Neutral or just, yeah.
indifferent. They're kind of only about themselves. And then there is that other 40 to 50% that, at least 40, I would say. And I'm throwing all these numbers out. I'm an ex-Marine. This is a lot of math for me, guys. I don't have my crayons with me or anything. But no, I think at least, about 40% is probably, they're caught up in their own power. They're high in their own power, and they can be dickheads. But that's it. Any profession that you have bad people in, the bad's always going to make everyone look bad. Like for me right now, I won't go to doctors anymore because doctors are lying. They're bigger order followers than cops. I don't trust anything in the medical field.
Right.
We've seen grocery store clerks become order followers. You can't get service if you don't wear your mask. So it's like, the biggest thing with the cops, what I see, is there are plenty of bad ones, right? But there's a lot of good ones who just were just like I was, a good one. You're socially engineered to think that's how you're going to protect people and serve people and do good. Then you get in the system and you realize, I'm not doing shit. And then they want to tell you who to enforce laws with and what laws to enforce, and take away your state given discretion that you supposedly have. And you end up being a personal little police force for whoever you're working for. And we've seen that on a big scale pretty recently.
Yeah.
With raids that have been done on political people and stuff like that. So it's like you're turned into a group. You're like, you become a personal, like The Princess Bride. I love that movie. You're like on the Brute Squad. You literally are on the Brute Squad when you do that shit, right?
You are the Brute Squad.
Yeah, you are the Brute Squad. Yeah, right. And I mean, I'm just so glad I'm out of it. I'm glad I got tools to battle the resentment. And I'm glad when I was in, I never used excessive force. I mean, I've got copies of all my employee evaluations. I'm not some disgruntled guy. I had good marks. Like, I did excellent in two areas: community policing, which, you know, is talking people down. I didn't want to have to fight with people, and then training, because I was a training officer. So of course I'm going to have, you know, above average in those marks. All my other ones just barely making it, but they made it. So I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't like I had any belows or anything like that. Um, yeah, I never had to use excessive force. Was always well trained. So anytime I did have to use force, no one got hurt because I was able to restrain them without hurting them. I've never. There's lots of another thing. There's a lot of officers don't want to train. You know, they start off training in the beginning, they let it all go.
Hmm.
And that's when they end up having to use excessive force because they're too out of shape and they're not trained enough to do stuff. They have to escalate the force because they can't handle it hands on.
Right. They have no creativity, no
Yeah, like
you know, intuition and things that,
I
you know,
used my baton one time in my entire life, and it wasn't to hit somebody. It was to do a running arm lock to get them safely cuffed. I've never pepper sprayed anybody. I never even balled up my fist and hit anybody.
well,
It wasn't needed for me personally. But then the biggest martial art that I think you can have as a police officer, as any person actually, you're in a bar someplace and you accidentally look at someone's woman because she's, you know, good looking, and the guy comes up to you drunk and wants to fight you. Maybe having good verbal skills will get that fight. You know,
yeah.
if you do it the right way, you won't have to get into a fight.
And that's the mark of a true warrior, though, right there. Is like one of my favorite movies of all time, Braveheart. When he's his uncle is there with, you know, with the young William, and he's like, first I teach you to use this, then you learn to use the sword.
Right.
That's exactly right. And again, that just shows the lack of care, the lack of creativity, any kind of right brain function whatsoever of these guys. And it's the same as kind of authoritarian parenting as well. It's like, you know, they're too lazy to try to actually think of good solutions that are educative. It's much easier to just, you know, ground them, go whip them with a belt, whatever,
Right.
to get the outcome that you're trying to get.
Right. Right.
It's the same
I
mindset.
don't believe in corporal punishment. I don't believe in negative reinforcement.
Yeah.
Very rarely does it lead to anything good.
And it leaves a lot of psychological imprints that I think are the very things that set us up for accepting statism, you know, basically slavery and all of that. It's a projection of that, because it's a violation of your autonomy, creates all this shame and self-loathing,
Mm-hmm.
and then that either gets turned inwards or projected outwards. So yeah, interesting, man.
Yeah, schools are. I did high school security too. Man, I have done a lot of stuff like that. There was a period of time when I wasn't actually in law enforcement. I was working for a contract security company. Did a little bit of high school security, and from back then to what I see now, even now especially, they're being taught learned helplessness.
Exactly.
That you're not allowed to defend yourself in a fight because you're involved in a fight and you're still going to be suspended. So,
Wow.
you know, even back when I was a kid, you know, I talked about this, and I was going to school in the '80s. If you got into a fight, but you weren't the one who started it, you know, the person who started it, it's like, say you won the fight, but they started it, you'd still get like an in-school suspension, and they'd get an out-of-school suspension. Now, if you got beat up and they started it, you were perfectly fine. But since you won, you're going to get a little bit of a punishment. They'll just get more. Now it's just like via zero tolerance policy. If you stand there and I don't want to say any names, I don't want to say anything, but there's this person in the 12th grade, and she was going to let herself get beat up because she didn't want her chances for college ruined. And it's like, you're going to end up in the hospital. You know, next time something like that happens, you know, defend yourself. Don't worry about, you know, what the consequences are. You have a right to defend yourself.
Well, that's straight up cult tactics right there. Is,
Yeah.
you know, dependency. And anytime, you know, that's how you create a perfect slave, essentially, is make them to where they can't do anything for themselves. They need that authority figure to come in and just be their parents. They're taking it back to the cosmic abandonment thing again.
Yeah. And this is what's funny. And this is all about the contradictions again. There's just so many of them. a lot of times when police respond to, say, a woman who's being abused, and the person is stalking them or something, and they have like a restraining order against them or something like that, or temporary protection order, the police will tell the woman, that's just a piece of paper. You need to get a firearm and go learn how to use it, get some training so you can protect yourself. So even the police will most of the time give that advice to somebody, yet the laws will say only the police are allowed to use force.
Hmm.
You know, the laws will, so like how they got it, how they're setting it up, and they're starting it in these schools, which are indoctrination camps. It's exactly what they're doing. It's cult indoctrination. And I've got a little bit of experience with that from the Marine Corps. I know exactly what that is.
Right. And I mean, I've been thinking this for a while, but I'd love to hear your firsthand either corroboration or counterpoint to this. But it seems to me police don't really prevent very many crimes at all.
Right.
All they do is, it's like the South Park stereotype where they show up after the fact with blankets and hot cocoa and, write a report and then, okay, we'll do our best, and they go about their way. So how much does that stand true in terms of like prevention versus just kind of a
They
response?
told us straight out in the police academy, they told us this, and this is something that all cops know. It is a reactionary sport. You're never going to be there when a crime is going on. You're never going to be there when a crime is going on. I can't even say that enough. You have to learn how to protect yourself. It's your responsibility. As a training officer, when I would train cops, I would tell them, your safety is ultimately your responsibility. So that stretches over to every human being on this planet. We have that right to defend ourselves. It is a sacred right of self-defense. And, all that matters is who started it. And as long as you're defending yourself, it's a reactionary sport. Unfortunately, you're never going to be there. Cops ain't going to be there when you're getting raped, when you're getting assaulted, when you're getting robbed. It's going to be after the fact.
And that's what's so disturbing about how many people there are that are like avidly anti-firearms, or I shouldn't say, because that doesn't exist. There's nobody that's anti-gun. They're anti-normal people guns. They're very pro-police and military guns. And that's just another one of those contradictions. But it's like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, you have to know there's evil in this world. And there, like, even if you had the ability to call the police as it's actively happening, it could be minutes or hours before they show up, and who knows what could happen.
You're getting beat up 30 seconds is a long time.
Exactly. Even most gunfights are only like a minute long or something.
Well, right? Sometimes. Other times, because of different things, there's like at the OK Corral, I forgot there was 150 rounds fired or something, and only one person injured or something, one person dead. So sometimes they go on for a long time too, but there's a group of people out there who specifically want to cancel the police and generally don't like the police and have been more like, these people who are basically communists and socialists, and these people who have these ideations that they deserve something for nothing. They usually don't like the police or military, but they don't like guns. You don't like the police and military, but that's the only one you want to let to have guns. And on one of my podcasts, I do these little tack chats. I talked about, and this is like really, it's probably preaching to the choir, but the Constitution, the Second Amendment, wasn't made for hunting, and it wasn't even made for self-defense. Mm-hmm. Self-defense could be used with your self-defense. You can use any tool. All a gun is a tool.
Right.
It has no sentience. All it is a tool. But the guns, the Second Amendment was not made for self-defense. It was not made for hunting. It specifically was made through violence of action to overthrow an immoral fucking government, is what it was made for. Now, like, I'm not saying that. I don't want that. I don't think violence begets more violence. But that's what it was made for.
Sometimes violence is the restoration of peace, though. That's the thing. Yeah. If someone's initiating violence, they're the ones creating that situation. And then sometimes violence, unfortunate as it is and tragic, is the only thing that will stop somebody that's hell-bent on doing harm. And that's not a violent action.
That's I like differentiating.
That's a peaceful. I say that's a peaceful action because you're restoring the peace.
You're using force versus violence.
Right.
But if you just look at violence as the act, like how most people look at it, they just look at it as the act of using physical aggression to harm somebody. It could be for self-defense, or it could be for you're the actual aggressor. They say that violence has never solved anything, and throughout history, violence is the only thing that has solved. Violence of action is the only thing that has overthrown all these different dictators throughout history. But it seems like we replace them with more people who become dictators. So we're like
Yes.
dogs chasing our tail,
Yeah.
and we have this repeated pattern that's been going on since Mesopotamia of violent dictators. Like we've been in a state of slavery the whole time.
Right. It's the Ouroboros
Yeah,
because of the one constant that has not gone away, and that is the belief in authority, the
right,
validity of authority.
right.
Well,
And
we'll see how many times we can repeat our mistakes till
hopefully
we figure it out.
Hopefully we don't do it too much longer. But there's just if order followers they were fooled, and there's a historical picture of this, and I put it on one of my podcasts, where a bunch of German soldiers shot women and female children. It was a femicide. What dehumanization had been done to make any of them think that that was a right moral action, shooting women and female children? So if you look at shows like The Walking Dead, humanoids, but it's okay to kill them.
Right.
If you look at orcs from Lord of the Rings, they're humanoids, but they're monsters, kill them. So the first thing they try to do is dehumanize each other.
Dehumanize, exactly.
And so they dehumanize this person. Like in Vietnam, they used to call the Vietnamese, North Vietnamese army, the NVA, they were chinks. You can't, they're, instead of just realizing we're all people.
Well, every cult has a us and them verbiage where we're this thing and they're that thing, infidels or goyim or whatever it is. Even civilian could be considered kind of it's a separation construct.
That's big in police work. I mean,
Right.
it's real big in police work. I remember I was being interviewed on one show, and I think it might have been Leslie, on Dissolving the Divide. It was her,
Yep.
her and Derek. And they asked me when I said it's us, against them. And they were like, well, who's them? And I was like, all of you are them. So that's the mentality that they end up. And it's funny enough, in the police academy, they do teach you the correct way, that you're there to serve and protect them. They give you that power and authority to do that. And you don't ever let it become you against them. And that ends up being exactly what happens. It's an us against them mentality. Then you got a lot of cops who all they do is hang out with other cops. Like throughout my career, I didn't hang out with other cops. I hung out with regular people, which probably kept me regular, is what it did. I had one guy I was staying with or roommating with, and I fucking walk. Excuse my language. I'm sorry. I'm coming in the house. I come in the house, and he's sitting in his recliner watching cops. Okay, with his gun and his badge on a day off. This is why I'm scared of young cops. They get full of themselves with this stuff, and of course I start making fun of them. Like I couldn't. I had to start making fun of them. What are you doing, dude? You think someone's gonna parachute out of the ceiling or just materialize, and you're gonna have to arrest them? You're watching cops on your day off, and you got your badge and your gun on your day off. So yeah, I mean, there's guys out there. Not everyone's that gungy, but there are people out there like that. And believe me, the rest of us will make fun of them and try to keep them in order. We would call guys road Nazis who, bragging about, I got 13 of them today. Good for you. I couldn't write speeding tickets, because when I got off duty, I know I was going to drive 25 miles over the speed limit just to get home and have a beer after dealing with some of the idiots I had to deal with, and that wasn't the public. So, and I wasn't some guy who, I got along with people. It wasn't like I, didn't get along with people, but there's just so much conflict down there. Yeah, I mean, I just couldn't be. I felt like a hypocrite if I was going to write people for speed when I was speeding all the time myself. And that's just a money-making mechanism anyway. Unless you're going 80 miles per hour in a school zone where kids are out on recess, I don't think, that's just a money-making mechanism, in my opinion.
Definitely. It's all a racket. But it's it's a mechanism of control as well.
Right.
That's how the trauma-based mind control works. There has to always be that ever-present threat of coercion. That's one thing I don't think people ever think through when they say things like, there should be a law against this or a law against that. They're not thinking it through of like what they're actually advocating, you
Right.
know, and like or this is kind of ties in, but I'd always get really annoyed when I'd be pulled over and the cops like, why you seem nervous? And it's like, because I'm under duress right now. You have a weapon and you just pulled me over while I'm driving and I don't know what you might do. I didn't say that to him. Obviously, that's just going to rub them the wrong way anyways, but that's just the cold hard truth of it. When those
Sure.
lights come on, that's not a polite suggestion or a request. It's a fucking threat of violence.
Yes, it is. And something that I'll tell anyone listening is cops are afraid of cops too. If I'm off, when I was off duty and I was driving, and they pull out behind you, the first thing that comes to your mind is shit. Like there's nobody who likes that. It doesn't matter who you are. And I mean, I've seen too many horror videos where the cop asks, can I see your driver's license? Can you please get it for me? And the guy starts reaching to grab his driver's license because he's keeping it here, he's keeping it there. And you see these things where the cop's like, let me see your hands, let me see your hands. Next thing you know, they're shooting a dude and he was grabbing the driver's license. Like, there was one that happened at the gas station. Now, that's not all the time, obviously, but I mean, that does happen. So I was thinking about putting on a safety, thing on how to stay safe during police encounters because you are in danger. There's, when I teach firearms training or I teach any type of martial arts training, I say, when I was teaching cops, every encounter you have with a police officer, how many guns are present? At least one. So
Right.
take that off the table and keep your hands, where they can see you, especially if they're being stressed out with other stuff. I could see where that's very scary, and it's also aggravating. It's emasculating. What am
Exactly.
I getting pulled over for? Like what, and it's really easy to start copying an attitude with them because it's like,
It's stressful, so you're already kind of on edge.
yeah, and
And
you
then
you know
they usually start asking really like kind of condescending, questions and like just
well,
pushing you
they got
around and
their
stuff
audio
like that.
going too. So one of the things they'll ask you is, do you know why you're speeding? Do you know why, or they'll ask you, do you know why I
You know why
pulled
I
you
pulled you
over?
over?
And then I would just, most of the time, if I was, the advice I would give anybody is just say no sir, no, or not even sir, no, I don't actually. And
Yep.
then let them tell you, because if you're like, yeah, I was speeding,
You just incriminated yourself.
you just confessed.
Right.
You just kind of confessed. And there's a lot of times that cops out there will, if you say, yeah, I know I was speeding, I blah 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 blah, a lot of cops out there who are cool just give you a warning. I would give a warning, or at the very worst, what I started doing was I would write written warnings, which aren't fines. But then I was able to record, hey, I did my job. I did safety, but they got sick of me writing written warnings because they weren't making money off that. So, yeah, there's a lot of contradictions in it. I can tell you this: there's a lot of cops that leave because of the contradictions. There's a lot of cops who want to leave. They're counting the days down to when they can leave. And I think the powers that be know there's a whole bunch of them that aren't going to do immoral things when they're actually given the real orders to do real immoral things that I think could be coming up. At least I would hope. But like 2020 showed me is they followed orders no matter what they were told. So that the little bit of hope that I have with that, and then seeing how so many of my, ex former order followers are so political, they're like
Yeah.
mind controlled, and they're going to do whatever they're told to do. And that's why morals have to be clear to them on what real morality is, because their standard operational procedures do have that clause. It's your duty to disobey immoral orders, which is why the powers that be obfuscate what morality is. Keep them
Exactly.
confused, keep them accepting contradictions, keep them with this internal schism, and they want to worry about feeding their family. I took pay cuts every time I quit.
Yeah.
You
That's what you
know,
have to do.
yeah, and then I ended up going back, but then finally I quit for good. And again, getting back to that, in the very beginning of 2019, I worked in plain clothes one time, and it was for a part-time gig, and I never went back to it. And I had a chance to go back to it, but I came across cosmic abandonment, and I could honestly say that saved me from going back to it once I started to really understand. Because I could have ended up going back to it part-time anyway,
Right.
and I didn't. So, it does take some shadow work. Recently, I stopped watching people's work, and you get to the point where, you have to turn off the self-help videos and just sit there, look in the mirror.
Right.
And I think that's why it was very synchronistic when you hit me up on Tuesday, Tears Day. Because I had just said to myself that day, I'm not doing this stuff no more. I'm not even going to post crap on Facebook. I'm not going to do my show for a while. I'm going to do nothing but concentrate on writing my third book, in conjunction with a psychic mentor. And I think that would help humanity. That would do more to help humanity now than my show is doing. So I was really going to just concentrate on that. I remember saying I had this little meditation and prayer that I did and spoke aloud. And then, I told you, I'm driving along and I got this red-tailed hawk just kind of following me and screaming and all this stuff. And because of the shamanic symbolisms, and I know you're well versed in many different things like that, you briefly came to my head. Probably because I seen you on Facebook that day, but that I was like, wow, he probably would think this was, cool. And next thing I know, you hit me up. So
That's so funny.
wow. It's very synchronistic on stuff that happens. That's why I do think there is, and with my own experiences, there is a higher power at work that wants to see the good guys win. That's definitely on our side, and, trying to wake people up.
Yeah.
Which is my only message I would give of hope, because sometimes it's really easy to look at how well orchestrated all this is, and you could lose faith.
Absolutely. And I definitely think putting something together like what you were talking about, some kind of a free course, or, I mean, hell, you could even charge for it. I don't see a problem with that, of like telling people what the do's and don'ts are in that type of situation. I think your background gives you a lot of credibility. So I think it's something people would be interested in, and is very valuable, because most people don't, well, they're not going to teach you that in school. That's for sure.
No,
It's
no,
like
I
they're
mean,
just kind of winging it, but also, again,
right.
you're stressed in that situation. So you might make stupid mistakes because you're under duress, and,
Right. Or you make nervousness in general will make you do furtive movements.
that's true too.
And
Yeah.
those quick movements will scare officers, because the one who wins the gunfight's the one who has the gun out first in most cases. Just like in ancient Japan, the one who won, the samurai who won the sword fight, is who was fastest on the draw of the sword.
Right.
So, if you're reaching for something, they think it's like, I was thinking about doing just a police safety course where, hey, how do you get through a normal traffic stop as safely as possible, like for the public? And I was thinking about maybe doing a podcast about that. And
Yeah,
it
it's a
doesn't
great
mean you have
idea.
to twist a police officer's ass or anything. It just means, hey, this is how you can safely get through this. And then, go have your day in court if you want, and,
Right.
and fight it. We still live in this system that we're not going to be able to change overnight. And that was another question that was asked of me, like, what about private police? What about, instead of having police work for the government, you have a privatized force that works for a community, let's say, and they get paid to blah, 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 blah. And I just can't help but think that. And, that's problem is not going to be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. I think those guys would end up turning into thugs too. So, or could, when given that authority. I think if everyone started to understand natural law, even at a fifth grade mental level, within 2 generations of human beings, we would be at this higher level of consciousness that we wouldn't need police. We would protect each other.
Right. We need to bring back that normalcy of, carrying guns, and just, the well-armed society being a polite society, that kind of thing, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. I got a couple more questions for you, and then maybe we can take some questions. I'm sure there'd be people, and I want to go ahead and let the audience know. I like to share the link to join the stream. So if you want to come on, You could be on video, or if you prefer only being audio only with the camera off, that's perfectly fine. And you can come on and ask a question to Dan and I, and be joining part of the conversation. So, be thinking about what your question might be, and working up the courage if that's something you might want to do. And we'll move to that in a few minutes. But in
Before
the
you go on,
meantime,
Logan, let me go take a break real quick. I'll be
that's
right back.
fine. I need
Okay.
one too. So stand by, everyone, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back. Hope we didn't lose too many people.
How many people did you have? Were you able to tell on your side?
Right now we've got 31, which is actually pretty consistent with what we've had so far, and it's a
Cool.
decent turnout too. Normally the average is like 25. So thanks everyone, and hopefully it seems like everyone's enjoying this so far. All right, man. So one question I had for you is, and first of all, how long has it been since you've been completely out?
January 2019, I worked one time.
Okay, so a
And
few years, but not too long.
yeah, and prior to that, I hadn't done it since 2015.
Right.
So, yeah, it hasn't been a whole lot, but yeah, I've been completely out since 2019.
I got you. Okay. Well, so the reason I ask, I'm really curious about kind of the development or the pop growth and popularity of this idea of the sovereign citizen, right? It's a lot more people kind of learning their rights and learning, am I being detained, or like, am I free to go? This kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if you saw some of that uptick in your encounters, and how did your colleagues typically respond to that? Was there this kind of sentiment of like, oh, we got another guy over here like talking about his rights, and like, because I've seen that in videos sometimes as well. Like, do they find that annoying, or
Yeah, they end up finding it annoying. And what ends up happening is they gave us like roll call briefings and talking about how very dangerous these sovereign citizens can be, and all this other stuff. And they have teletypes that come across, and um, I've always been kind of a rebel, so I didn't really consider them to be dangerous. But I was also one of the guys who didn't write a lot of tickets, so I wasn't really about having to pull them over. My whole career, I put 2 people in prison, and both of them were rapists. So I was sort of enforcing natural law without even realizing I was doing it. But yeah, they do try to scare you into that these guys are, very dangerous and blah, blah, blah. At the time,
extremists?
yeah, and the area that I was working in had this gang called the, God, what were they called? The something felons. I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of them, but they were murderers. I mean, they would murder over turf, but a lot of times, thinking back on it with what I've learned since then, they murdered over drugs. So if drugs were legal, they probably wouldn't have been murdering each other over drugs, So, Yeah, that was a gang to worry about, not sovereign citizens. But I never had to have any encounters with them.
Hmm.
I was working over in a very urban area, and a lot of the sovereign citizens weren't in that area. So, but yes, we were warned about them, and that's the best way to put it. Is they warned us that they could be very dangerous because they didn't recognize our authority. And thinking back on like where I'm at now, it's like, oh, they don't, huh? You think they don't recognize your authority? You a human being, and they're a
Exactly.
human being. It's like, uh, I don't know. I
Wow.
don't see. I've never heard of any sovereign citizens outright shooting a cop for no reason, or even doing that. They just generally are very resistant, and we're all allowed to be. You're allowed to be as resistant as you want. Police aren't allowed to be offended. And the fact is most people go to jail for committing, that offense that is jokingly called you offended a cop. So I
Yeah.
mean, like I never did that, but there's cops out there that will. They'll take it personal, and then you're going to go. I had one cop try to do it to me until he found out I knew the law and that I was a cop, and then he backed off. But if you know the law, I think then you can use it against them.
It's kind of a catch-22, and that's been some of my apprehension of it as well. Is like on one hand, you can kind of defend yourself a little bit better by knowing your rights, but simply by asserting them, you're kind of making yourself stand out as
Mhm.
it's like, the kid on the playground that like will stand up to the bullies. Well, now they're a target. You know what I mean?
Well,
Because they
yeah,
don't like that.
how you can do it is you can do it in a way that'll get them to think, "Ooh, they might be right." So how you can do it is like they always want to, say like one of the big things that you can get arrested for is disorderly conduct, with persist. And in order for it to be disorderly conduct, it's got to be in a public place where you're actually being disorderly to the public. Well, if they're on your private property, let's say, if you're someplace that is private property and it's not public, and they say if you don't do this, we're going to arrest you for disorderly conduct with persist. All right, I'm on private property, but whatever you say, sir. They're going to realize, oh, this guy knows the law a little bit, and then they'll think twice, you know.
Interesting.
So that's like one of the things that you could do. That's what I told the dude when I had my issue with him. But we've seen videos of cops on the side of the road fighting each other on duty.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, like the shit that you see out there, and that's I think authority, when it's bestowed upon human beings, corrupts, and I think that's part of it. And then you get people who get stressed out, and then they're stressed out usually equals lash out.
Right.
So, and they're doing a lot in the world right now to have us in this fear, anxiety driven state. Um, Now more than ever, what I would tell anybody viewing this is be ready to protect yourself, because cops aren't going to lift a finger. They're under too much of a microscope, and they have this general feeling, and this is just something to let everybody know. There's a general feeling that they feel like they're damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't. And in one of my podcasts, I told them specifically, "Well, you are."
You are
Because
exactly.
you're doing a job that's upholding an immoral system. So no matter how you look at it, you kind of are. So that's a tough pill to swallow, because everyone's raised with these contradictions. Many of them got into this line of work to do something, to try to really make a difference. And I would say people doing the one great work are the real people making a difference. I made no difference doing what I was doing. And a lot of cops know we're not making a difference. You're just stuck with all these contradictions. And that's why there's such a high suicide rate amongst, order followers in general, military and police.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, you're not doing it right. I still have certain things that bother me from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, I think largely they're dupes, and I could speak for myself as well. I was in the Air Force. Some might not really think that counts. Fair enough, but I,
It
I
counts.
think I think largely, men are exploited uh, by these recruiting, recruiters and advertising and things like that. that sort of hijacks and takes advantage of their masculine instincts to protect, to serve. Those are
Right.
genuinely good masculine things,
Right.
but then they get in and it's not what they thought it was, or they thought it was going to be. And then
Right.
they kind of have this choice of either lose their soul and assimilate and become like part of the culture and like forget about their conscience, or
Right.
they just don't do very well and probably end up leaving at some point. So it's like you feel like I got taken advantage of. Like I'm sure that's a really lousy feeling.
Yeah, like you
Like
got
you got
used.
burned.
You were
Yeah,
someone's private goons, is what you feel like. And if you got like any type of, and I know I'm not the only cop out there, ex cop or whatever, who thinks like that or feels like that. That's why I'm
yeah.
absolutely not fearful at all of any type of retaliation. I'm not saying anything that they don't know is fucking true. So, yeah, I'm not telling any great secrets here.
Right.
If anything, what's going to happen is they're going to be replaced with younger left wing type of cops who are going to be willing to stand next to blue hatted UN peacekeepers and do immoral things.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm afraid is coming with everything. I mean, I can do a whole, and I might do it on my podcast, or actual conspiracy theorist, although I consider myself to be a conspiracy analyst. I might do an entire conspiracy theory episode where I talk about what I think's coming. But I don't want to scare people, but it's, be prepared. It might help people prep. I think
Oh
I
yeah, I
lost.
was muted.
Okay.
Yeah, I said absolutely. And just to wrap up here, I see we have a taker waiting backstage. Patricia, I'll let you on in just a moment, and we'll go into the Q&A segment. But I want to kind of wrap up this talk by just considering and bringing forth for consideration somebody who may have not thought of this, but what, when it comes to this system that we know is evil, and I think everybody somewhere deep down on some level knows that it is. Who are the people that are actually keeping it in place and enforcing the laws and going overseas and invading other countries and kicking doors down all over the world? It's not the politicians, and they get a bad rap, and for good reason, but they tend to be sort of the scapegoats. And everyone shits on the politicians for doing, promising this and doing another thing or whatever, and that's all fine and true. But then at the same exact person will praise the police and military for protecting us and keeping us safe. It's like, no, they're the ones that are actually enforcing the policies of these guys over here that you were just shitting on. And that's just something you have to kind of accept. It's a hard pill to swallow because our society has really drank the Kool-Aid when it comes to this, putting them on a pedestal and almost like worshiping them. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not in alignment with reality. So
Yeah,
Dan,
no,
your thoughts on that?
there's a meme that comes to mind. You have this cop sitting in his car holding this coffee cup or whatever. It says, "Don't tread on me." And there's a dude underneath there. It says, "Bro, you're literally the boot."
You the boot, man. Come
Yeah.
on.
So it's like, that's really what it is. And that's a tough thing for people to swallow.
Right.
It was hard for me to swallow that.
Are the people
But
that
once I did, it's easy for me to say it now and actually look at these things. And I've been doing this thought process since 2019. So every once in a while, I was thinking of some stuff today. I had to do things where I was restraining G.I. Joe. I don't want to fight G.I. Joe. I want to fight Cobra. Okay. So it was
exactly.
like literally these things that come back to me. So there are things, there is PTSD. When you're getting over your PTSD from certain things, you can talk about it. When you're still not over it, you can't talk about it.
Yeah.
So everyone that came back to me. So it's just like, there was too many times I was fighting G.I. Joe and not Cobra, is what I feel
Great
like.
point. Yeah, and that's the hardest thing that anyone can probably do, is admit that they were wrong, especially if they were actively participating in evil, as
Right.
as Mark Passio calls the cult of ultimate evil.
Right.
As order followers. So you can't you can't be a good person and following orders at the same time, because you're by nature, by definition, putting your own moral compass aside and just carrying out, being the arm of another person.
You're giving up your own sovereignty when you actually are order following, and order following is not a natural state. I can't even tell you how many times the 5-year-old in me wanted to scream out, "You're not the boss of me,"
Exactly.
to my supervisors. And I know that's how everyone thinks. Everyone thinks like that. You're giving up your own sovereignty whenever you and your own critical thought. Where's
Yeah.
your own critical thought process? So like they listen to government, right? And in the military, they tell you God and God, country, and court. So God's always above the country, though, right? So I would like to say a message from God I'm getting right now is to tell order followers to start thinking critically. It's an order from God, critical thinking.
Yeah,
Which
he
means
gave you a brain for a reason.
think for yourself. That's the main thing, and it's not easy to do. I get it, but
Yeah.
it actually is very easy to do if you do it. It's not hard.
You just have to make that choice. The choice is what's hard. The doing it just follows after that.
Yeah, and I was in so many different conflicts with people that I worked with, and I left it several times before I finally left it for good. So there was an obvious conflict within me going on. You know what
Right.
that is, and that's out there for a lot of people.
Yeah. Great, awesome points. That's a good place to kind of wrap up the topical discussion and move into our Q&A segment. So let's go ahead and bring on Patricia, who's been waiting patiently for a while. Thank you for that. Hello there. Welcome. Can you hear us? Not sure if your mic is on. I'm not able to hear you, Patricia. Is your mic muted at the bottom? And make sure you select the correct microphone.
Can she type it? Tell her to write it on a piece of paper and hold it up to the.
You can type in the private chat if you had a question. I'm not sure why your sound's not working. I'm sorry about that. Again, the join link is in the chat as well. Anyone who wants to jump in. Okay. Patricia says, would like to know Dan's opinion on the Reed technique interrogation, which has led to many false confessions. And she mentions the Aragon series. I think that's the books. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but
No, I'm not really familiar with. I mean, I've had interview and interrogation training. I don't know what the Reed technique is. I've never heard of that. But I do know that what this is about is getting checks, and the whole justice system is set up this way. And detectives want checks in the win column. They want a confession, and a lot of times people will confess to something they didn't even do, but they'll say something that can be used against them in the court of law. Which is why when they tell you to, you have the right to remain silent, that's the greatest thing they're telling you. You should just go ahead and probably do that the whole time. And never answer a question unless you have a lawyer present. Never. That's would be my, and a lot of times they're going to keep talking to you and talking to you and talking to you because it's general conversation. You say something that's considered legally an excited utterance, they'll keep talking to you. This is all stuff that's going to be used against you in a court of law. And until you say, hey, am I being held for questioning or am I under arrest? Well, no, we just want to have a talk with you. Hey, have a good day, guys. Stay safe. I'm leaving. Well, no, you are being held for questioning. Okay, then I'm under arrest. I want a lawyer. Period.
that's great.
That's all I can say about that. As far as the actual Reed, I'm gonna have to look that up. I'm gonna have to study that.
Reed technique.
The Reed technique.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of interesting things that you'll notice when you start studying mind control. Again, that's what I'm doing my presentation on. So I've really been diving into that. And I also watch a channel called, what is that? Oh man, it's a body language type type deal. This guy, he's like an illusionist. He does all this kind of thing, and he will break down body language and little tells that people will do, micro expressions and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And he
Mm-hmm.
covers a lot of interrogations, and it's really chilling when you watch the course of these, because they try to keep you in there for hours, right?
They
And
got to
it's
get
like
a baseline.
baseline,
Yeah.
exactly. And then also it's about, wearing you down, because like with any a standard cult technique is isolation. So they have you in this room, you don't have anyone you can look to, or like reflect ideas off of, or something like that, right? And then they just keep asking you this question. After a while, you start questioning your own reality, and
Right.
gosh, did I do that? And that's how they
Yeah.
get a lot of these fake confessions, is they just wear the people down for so long. Eventually they crack, and they're just like, I just don't want to be here. I don't know what's going on. And I guess I must have done that, like it's
Yeah.
pretty crazy to see.
That's why, that takes just a strong mind to just sit there and not say anything.
Yeah.
I got called in one time. I was being investigated for something in the prison. Supposedly, some force, but not force. Someone's cell was tossed, and me and my partner both they came at him real hot and heavy because he was new, and they thought they were going to scare him, and he didn't say anything. There was nothing wrong done. They were doing their little "be nice to me" thing, the good cop bad cop thing, and they had me sit down, and I knew what I was going in there for, and I just sat down and didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And then they sat there, and this is a trick they'll use: they'll just be quiet. And them being quiet, they think you're going to be nervous and want to fill the space with words. So I just sat there and picked up a magazine and started looking at the magazine, and then they said, "Get the fuck out of this office." And I'm like, "See ya." So like I had already had training on that kind of stuff. So, but the read technique, I'll definitely have to look that up.
All right. Sounds good.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure
Great
I'm going to be questioned.
explanation. Yeah. No further questions.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question, Patricia. Hopefully that answered your question at least to some degree. And thanks for jumping on. I see we have someone here. I don't know if they're Bandia Anya.
Yeah,
Uh, okay, can you hear us? All right.
yeah, can you hear me? Okay, we're good.
Yeah, yeah. Welcome to the show. You're live on the Wizard Factory.
Thank you, Wizard. But no, I think it's, wonderful that you're doing this because I'm from New York and I grew up in a like big city where I couldn't I couldn't find a lot of bad cops actually because you know what? I came from Russia and I used to not be aware of like all the issues they had here, and I had like milk cartons I would come in with to the police precincts and ask the cops like, "Hey, what happened to this? Did you find this one? Did you find that one?" You remember the milk cartons, right? And I remember
Mhm.
their treatment of me was getting, it was always kind. It was never bad. And over the years back in the 90s, it was getting worse and worse. And like right now, I moved away from cities and I live in a 200 people town where the cops are obviously like the ones that don't think, that they just like are earning a paycheck.
Mhm.
They give out tickets in a 200 people town where they don't solve problems like a human. They solve problems like their policy says. And I noticed a lot of people quit. Thank God. And and in the because I would berate them with like just because they're local cops, and I would come over, how dare you do this to a person? They've been living here whatever for so long, and I would come in there like yelling and raging. And I'm glad you're doing this because I realized that was wrong of me. That probably shouldn't have been done that way. Um,
I
and
wouldn't say it was wrong of you. It may have not been the most tactful approach, but actually, I think you were consumed with a righteous rage. And sometimes people need to get kind of beat over the head, physically or not physically, but verbally, to break them out of their trance. So, I mean, I actually think that could have been a good thing what you did there.
I
Probably
had
will.
went
Some
in
of
the
them.
fire department because he because he arrested somebody over a DUI where he could have just pulled them over and made them walk home. And I told this like a thing that is not ours. This is not our own. This is how we treat each other. And yeah, I mean, I'm trying to find a better way to do that. So
Yeah.
I would appreciate like a show dedicated to how we approach these when we do have people that want to say something and will say something, because I have no problem. How do we do it? Yeah.
I would say to try to appeal to their humanity is the
Yeah.
first thing. And I think the whole world needs a little bit more Christ consciousness, a little bit more love and understanding and things like that. And if you could appeal to their humanity first, then ask the question about the morality of what they're doing second, you'll get them to think possibly. If you started off on a where the egos jump out, once the ego's involved, it's done. Um, and that's not right because you have a right to be mad. And maybe you getting mad at them might be why some quit, to be honest with you. They might have realized, wow, all we do is write tickets here because there's no real crime here. And that's all they're making us do is write tickets. I worked in a small town that was a little bit larger than that for a period of time. And the reason why I didn't want to write a lot of tickets is because, and I would tell my partners, if I'm out on the side of the road with something and I'm getting beat up and someone drives by,
Yeah,
I
that's right.
want somebody to say, hey, that's Dan getting beat up. Let's stop and help him. I didn't want to be officer so-and-so. So to me, getting to know people in community policing was like kind of a big deal. So just definitely try to humanize them first and let them know that they're human and that, see if you can get them on that level first. Appeal to some type of positive emotion. Now, I'm not no psychologist or anything, but I know if you can do that, you probably have more, you'll probably get further with them.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's better to have them on our side than be against us. When
And that's what I'm thinking too with what's coming up in the world. The more of them that quit that line of work, the more of them we'll have on our side. And even the most mediocrely trained cop still has training.
Exactly.
And to
Great
get as
point.
many of them on our side is what I would like to do because there's definitely going to be sides. Stuff's coming.
Mm-hmm. Better on our side than against us. And last
Yeah.
thing we need is just yet another divide.
exactly.
Like the best thing that could have happened a few years ago was if the police officers that were towing that line during protests, when they were told to protect, public buildings, if one or two of them would have just put down their baton and said, fuck this, and stepped out and turned around and
And
stand with their fellow citizens. All it takes is one or two to do that. The rest of them will do it. Not all the kneeling stuff. All the kneeling stuff wasn't showing anything. That wasn't doing nothing. You remember back in 2020, cops were all kneeling and stuff like that. That wasn't doing anything.
no,
It
that was
had
just conformity, but
yeah.
Yeah.
But
but
that can turn around and face, with your fellow citizens, face the building and protest what's going on. That will show the leaders something.
we've seen proof of that, though. It works when you had protests, I think, in other countries where cops did that. And so, and at one time, I know in Russia, there was, and it's not just Russia, this was like parts of Russia that used to be USSR, grandmas would come out with mirrors and they would show the mirrors. And
Mm.
that was a really good way
How
to
about that?
stop them. Yeah, it was wonderful. And
How
actually,
about that?
come with a
It's
mirror.
powerful.
What a great
Powerful.
idea, man. Holy cow. Yes, that's great.
I mean, yeah, it's that's what it's there's foreign behaviors that are obviously not human, but they're within all of us. Like we all have them at this point. There's nobody that is pure, right?
Right.
And if there's a way to kind of distinguish, to tell which behavior is your own, and point it out without harm, that would probably be a mirror.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, I'm far from pure, and East Palestine, Ohio, wasn't Ohio's first train wreck. I was a train wreck well before that. So like, there definitely could be people that could be doing this that would probably be better representatives than I am, but I'm honest. So
That's you holding up the mirror to yourself, brother.
yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to take. Every single person being willing to do that and look into it. See the truth.
yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you for
Yeah. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
your question. I really appreciate that. Anyone else care to join? More than welcome to.
I probably only got about 15 or 20 minutes. I'd like to be able to stay on longer, but at 3:30, I got people coming over who've paid for training.
Yeah, that's almost exactly like how we typically run.
Cool.
We're coming up on 2 hours and 15-20 minutes is usually what I do,
Cool.
give or take. I mean, already as is really awesome.
Well, what I'll just say to you is like you and me back in 2020-ish, we had a lot of positive back and forths on social media between YouTube and Facebook. And so I knew who you were. I followed your work. And then I met you, I don't know if you probably remember me. I met you
I
at
do.
Float Fest.
Float Fest. Yeah,
And
man.
what I can tell everybody about you is your calm demeanor that you have is very calming, and it ain't an act; it's for real.
Well,
When I met
thanks.
you in person, you had a very calming demeanor, and we were, and you're a lot taller than I thought. I was like, holy shit, you should be playing basketball, man. And then we kind of, our attention went to some people with some guns, and I decided to go in the middle of all the gun guys and bust their chops a little bit. But yeah, this is the real him.
Well,
For anyone
thank
who
you.
doesn't know.
I appreciate you sharing that, man. It was great to meet you that year. That was a good event all around.
Yeah, they didn't have twisted tees with them. They needed to have their twisted tees. They weren't geared up properly as far as I'm concerned. But
I'm not familiar with what that means.
there was a thing happened a couple years ago, and they had a video of this guy hitting this dude in the store with a twisted tee. And next thing you know, they show everybody with
Oh,
their
like the pop, like
like
snapping them with it.
yeah, and next thing you know, they show all these guys with their twisted tee and their bug out like in their kit, wearing twisted tees instead of magazines. Uh, yeah.
Wow.
Now, see, I went and busted their chops, but it was still an anarchist event. I wasn't over in the Middle East, so I didn't get beheaded. I didn't feel unsafe going into the middle of a bunch of armed guys and busting their chops.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Well, I guess I don't see any other questions, and don't know that we have any other takers. So this might be actually, good as place as any to go ahead and wrap up. So anyone watching, hopefully you enjoyed this segment. You got some value out of it. Definitely go tell everyone where they can find more of your work as well.
My personal website is spiritualanarchist93.com. Spiritualanarchist93.com. If you type in spiritual anarchist Daniel Arnold, I'll pop up on YouTube. Although I was deplatformed once, I decided to redo the YouTube thing, and it was real weird because I had been on YouTube for about 7-8 years and only had like 2,000 views, and I redid it like last June or July, and I've already got like 27,000 views. I'm learning how to post things without getting myself kicked off. I've only had one strike against me or whatever so far. But then my link tree's on that, and I'm on. If you just go to spiritualanarchist93.com, my link tree's on there, and I'm on Odyssey, I'm on BitChute. I'm probably need to get on more, but those are where I could be reached. I also wrote a book called Rise from Darkness, Who Are They? And I wrote another book called The Violence and Ego, which is two things I know, unfortunately, a lot about. I had no idea they were going to be so important together. It wasn't the plan, but they really go together, actually. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and I'll get that link from you, and I'll make sure and put that down in the description box. So if you're watching the replay, that's probably right there for your convenience. So thank you, Dan, for joining us. This was an awesome chat. Really admire you as an individual, and hope that you do continue doing the awesome work that you're doing, opening minds and getting people more familiar with, morality, but from that perspective, from the order follower perspective as well. That's
Right.
very, very needed.
I plan on continuing. I might slow down on some videos. Tech chat number 50. I want to make that that's like a milestone for me. It's the 50th actual, podcast. I've done a bunch of coffee chats.
Yeah.
But, I'm probably going to save that. And I really want to work on this book. And I'm still going to do whatever. I'm still going to be working towards this stuff, but this book I have to get done. It's definitely something I need to knock out in the next couple of months. That's where I'm going to put my energy, because I start getting scatterbrained, I get nothing done. I need to
Yeah.
focus on one thing and just get it done. But
All
I
right.
will continue the work, man. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for the work you've done. There's people in the One Great Work Network I've never talked to, and I've learned from their work. So it's not
Right.
just people I have personal connections with or stuff. It's I've learned stuff. I thought I already knew something, and it was like, oh no, there was a nugget. I didn't know that, and it helped put puzzle pieces together for me.
Nice.
So, and it's still doing it. So thank you to everybody in that network.
Absolutely. So that wraps us up for today. Thanks everyone again for tuning in. Please just drop a quick like down below. That's really, really helpful. If you enjoyed it, and you're not yet subscribed, do subscribe. Make sure you click the bell so that you're not relying on the crappy algorithms. And that's going to wrap us up for this week. Share this video with a friend. Share it with an order follower. Maybe that's the little nugget that they needed to change their minds. So we'll see you again next week for the live show. But until then, be empowered, inspired, and encouraged. Much love to you all.
Thank you, Logan.